The barn door hung crooked on its hinges, swinging slow in the evening wind. Inside, the air smelled like sweat and fear and old hay gone to rot. Lanterns swung from the rafters, casting shadows that crawled across the faces of men who'd come to buy what they shouldn't. She knelt in the center of the dirt floor, wrists bound behind her back with fraying rope, ankles tied tight to a rusted iron ring someone had hammered into the ground years before. Her dress, once cream-colored, now stained with dust and something darker, clung to her frame. Her head was bowed, dark hair falling forward to hide her face. But Caleb saw her eyes. Just for a second, when she lifted her chin to breathe, he saw them, gray as winter's sky, empty as drought land. The auctioneer stood on a crooked platform made of stacked crates, grinning wide beneath a tobacco-stained mustache. He wore a vest that might have been fine once, back when he had dignity. Now it stretched tight across his gut, buttons straining. "Gentlemen, gentlemen," he crooned, voice slick as oil on water. "This here's a prime specimen, young, strong enough for field work. Quiet too, ain't heard a peep out of her since we brought her in. No family, no one to come looking. Clean slate, boys, clean slate." Caleb stood near the back, hat pulled low, shoulders hunched beneath his duster. He hadn't planned to be here, hadn't planned to stop when he rode past the barn and heard the voices inside, but something had pulled him off the trail, some instinct he couldn't name. Now he wished he'd kept riding. "What am I bid?" the auctioneer called. "Let's start at $50. A hand went up, thick-fingered rancher with a face like leather left too long in the sun. "60, someone else muttered. The woman didn't move, didn't flinch, just knelt there, breathing slow and steady, like she'd learned how to disappear inside herself. Caleb's jaw tightened. This wasn't legal, not anymore. The war had ended 8 years back, and the laws had changed, at least on paper. But out here, past the edge of civilization, where the law was whatever the man with the most guns said it was, old habits died hard. Auctions like this still happened in hidden barns, in valleys too far from towns for anyone to hear. 75, the leather-faced rancher grunted. The auctioneer's grin widened. "Now we're talking sense. Do I hear 80? "Silence." The woman lifted her head again, just a fraction. Her gaze swept across the room, not pleading, not begging, just witnessing, recording faces, like she wanted to remember every man who stood here and did nothing. When her eyes found Caleb, something flickered there. Recognition, maybe, or just exhaustion so deep it looked like knowing. 80, Caleb heard himself say. The word dropped into the barn like a stone into still water. Heads turned. The auctioneer squinted toward the back, trying to make out who'd spoken. "That you, stranger," he called. "Step up where we can see you." Caleb moved forward, boots scraping dirt. He kept his hands loose at his sides, away from the pistol on his hip. The men parted to let him through, curious now. He was tall, lean, with sun-dark skin and a scar that cut white through his left eyebrow. His clothes were trail-worn but clean. He didn't look like the others, didn't have that hungry, calculating edge. $80, Caleb repeated, voice flat. The leather-faced rancher turned to size him up. "You even got $80, boy." "I got what I bid." The auctioneer chuckled. "Well, now let's see it. Cash money, friend, no promises." Caleb reached into his coat, pulled out a small leather pouch. He tossed it onto the platform. It landed heavy, coins clinking. The auctioneer snatched it up, weighed it in his palm, then loosened the drawstring and peered inside. His grin returned. "Well, I'll be, gentleman's got funds after all." He looked around the barn. "Anyone wanna go higher?" The rancher spat into the dirt. "Ain't worth more than 70, she's scrawny." "Then we got ourselves a winner." The auctioneer gestured grandly toward the woman. "She's yours, friend, take her and go." Caleb moved toward her, crouching low. Up close, he could see the bruises on her wrists where the rope had bitten in. Her breathing was shallow, controlled. She didn't look at him. "I'm gonna cut you loose," he said quietly. "Don't run." She didn't respond, didn't move. He pulled a knife from his boot and sawed through the ropes, first her wrists, then her ankles. The moment she was free, She pulled her hands into her lap, rubbing at the raw skin, still didn't look at him. "Can you stand?" he asked. Yes, her voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. He stood, offering his hand. She stared at it for a long moment, like she'd forgotten what kindness looked like. Then she pushed herself up without taking it. The auctioneer counted the coins again, lips moving silently. "Pleasure doing business, stranger. She's all yours now. Do what you want with her, work her. Sell her, trade her, no refunds." Caleb didn't answer. He turned toward the barn door, jerking his head for the woman to follow. She moved like a ghost, silent and slow, keeping 3 paces behind him. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. Stars scattered across the sky like spilled salt. Caleb's horse stood tied to a post, a sturdy bay gelding with patient eyes. He untied the reins, swung up into the saddle. The woman stood beside the horse, looking up at him, waiting. "You can ride?" he asked. "Yes." He reached down. This time she took his hand. He pulled her up behind him, and she settled onto the horse's rump, gripping the saddle edge with both hands. They rode in silence for a long time, following the narrow trail that wound through scrub brush and juniper. The barn shrank behind them, swallowed by darkness. Caleb didn't look back. "What's your name?" he asked after a while. "Silence." "You got people, somewhere I can take you." More silence. He sighed. "Look, I'm not." "Don't," her voice cut through the night, sharp as broken glass. "Don't tell me what you're not. Don't tell me you're different. Don't tell me anything." He rode on, jaw tight. After another mile, she spoke again, softer this time. "My name is Asta." "Asta," he repeated. "I'm Caleb." She didn't respond. The moon rose higher, casting silver light across the desert. Somewhere far off, a coyote howled. The horse's hooves thudded steady against the packed earth. "I got a place," Caleb said eventually. "Small ranch about 10 miles north. You can rest there, figure out what you want to do." "What I want," Asta said slowly, "doesn't matter anymore." "It does to me." She laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "You paid $80 for me. That means you own me. That's how it works." "No," Caleb said, "that's not how it works." "Then how does it work?" He didn't have an answer for that. They rode on through the night, 2 strangers bound together by $80 and a barn full of shame. Caleb's ranch sat in a shallow valley where a creek ran year-round, fed by snowmelt from distant mountains. The house was small, just 2 rooms and a lean-to kitchen, but it was solid, built from timber and river stone. A barn stood nearby, older than the house, its red paint faded to rust. Fences stretched out in crooked lines, enclosing pasture where a dozen cattle grazed. It wasn't much, but it was his. He helped Asta down from the horse, then led the bay into the barn to unsaddle him. She stood in the yard, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the house like it might vanish if she looked away. "Go on inside," Caleb called from the barn. "Doors open. There's a bed in the back room. Take it." She didn't move. He finished with the horse, gave him water and a scoop of oats, then walked back to where Asta stood. Up close, in the moonlight, he could see her face clearly for the first time. She was younger than he'd thought, maybe 25. Her features were sharp, carved by hunger and exhaustion, but there was something else there too, something familiar. "You afraid of me?" he asked. "Should I be?" "No." "Then why'd you buy me?" Caleb looked away, toward the dark outline of the mountains. "Couldn't just leave you there." "Why not? Everyone else did." He didn't have an answer for that either. She moved toward the house, slow and deliberate, like she was testing the ground beneath her feet. He followed, giving her space. Inside, the house smelled like wood smoke and coffee. He lit a lamp, and warm light spilled across the main room. A table, 2 chairs, a cast-iron stove, shelves lined with canned goods and dried herbs. Asta stood in the center of the room, looking around. Her gaze landed on a photograph hanging on the wall, a family portrait, faded and cracked. A man, a woman, 2 children. She stepped closer, squinting at it. "Your family?" she asked. Was. She glanced at him. What happened? They died long time ago. She turned back to the photograph, studied it for another moment, then froze. Her hand lifted slowly, fingers trembling, and touched the edge of the frame. This woman, she whispered, what was her name? Caleb's chest tightened. Why? Tell me. Elena, her name was Elena. Asta's hand dropped. She took a step back, shaking her head. No, no, that's not. What? Caleb moved toward her. What is it? She spun to face him, eyes wide. Elena Brennan, that was her maiden name. She married a man named Caleb Hayes. They had a ranch near Silver Creek. Her voice cracked. That's you. Caleb went still. How do you know that? Because she was my mother's sister. Asta's voice rose, sharp and jagged. Because 10 years ago, when I was 15, my family came to visit yours. We stayed for a week. You were kind to me. You taught me how to ride. You gave me a carved wooden horse you'd made. The memory hit Caleb like a fist to the gut. He saw it suddenly, clear as daylight, a girl with grey eyes and dark braids laughing. As she tried to stay on a gentle mare. He'd been 20 then, still living at home, still whole. Asta, he breathed, God, I remember you. Then you remember what happened after. Her face twisted. 2 months after we left, riders came to our farm. They said my father was a Confederate sympathizer, said he'd hidden deserters. They burned everything, house, barn, fields, killed my parents, killed my brothers. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I hid in the root cellar, listened to them die. Caleb's throat closed. I didn't know. You should have. Her eyes blazed now, all that emptiness gone, replaced by something raw and furious. You knew the men who did it. You rode with them during the war. What? Captain Merrick, that's who led the raid. He was Union cavalry. You served under him. Caleb felt the ground tilt beneath him. I didn't, Asta. I left the war early, got shot, discharged. By the time those raids started, I was already home. I didn't know. But you could have stopped him. Her voice shook. If you'd been there, if you'd ridden with them that day, you could have stopped it. That's not fair. Fair, she laughed, bitter and sharp. You want to talk about fair? I've spent 10 years running, sold twice, beaten, starved, and now you show up in that barn and buy me like I'm livestock, like I'm something you can fix with $80. Caleb reached for her, but she jerked back. Don't touch me. I didn't know, he said again, desperate now. I swear to God, Asta, I didn't know what happened to your family. If I had, I would have. Would have what? Ridden out to save us. You didn't even come looking. I didn't know you were alive. Silence fell between them, thick and suffocating. Asta's shoulders sagged. She looked at him, really looked at him, and something in her expression shifted. Not forgiveness, not trust, but maybe recognition, a crack in the armor. When I saw you in that barn, she said quietly, I thought I was dreaming, thought maybe I'd finally lost my mind. But then you spoke, and I knew. She swallowed hard. I thought you'd come to finish what Merrick started. No, Caleb's voice broke. No, Asta, I came because I couldn't walk away, not from you, not from anyone. She stared at him for a long moment, then turned toward the back room. I'll take that bed now. He watched her go, watched the door close behind her. Then he sank into a chair, dropped his head into his hands, and tried to breathe through the weight crushing his chest. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled. Caleb didn't sleep that night. He sat at the table, staring at the photograph on the wall, remembering things he'd buried deep. His Aunt Elena, her husband, their kids, the visits, the laughter, the summers when family meant something. And Asta, young, bright-eyed, full of questions about horses and stars and everything beyond the farm. Now she was here, broken, bought. Because he'd been too late. Morning came slow, the sky bleeding from black to grey to pale gold. Caleb made coffee, fried eggs and bacon, set a plate outside Asta's door. She didn't come out. He left it there and went to tend the cattle. By midday, dust rose on the horizon. Riders, 3 of them, coming fast. Caleb set down the fence post he'd been mending and walked back to the house. He checked his pistol, made sure it was loaded, then stepped onto the porch and waited. The riders slowed as they approached, spreading out in a loose line. The man in the center was broad-shouldered, with a thick beard gone gray at the edges. He wore a badge pinned to his vest, a U.S. Marshal's star, tarnished but real. Caleb recognized him immediately. "Merrick," he said flatly. "Captain, no, Marshal now." Thaddeus Merrick smiled, cold and thin. "Hayes, been a while." "Not long enough." Merrick's smile widened. He swung down from his horse, boots hitting the dirt with a thud. The two men with him stayed mounted, hands resting on their sidearms. "Heard you made a purchase last night," Merrick said, voice conversational. "That true?" Caleb didn't answer. "See, that's interesting," Merrick continued, stepping closer. "Because the man running that auction, he works for me, been running those sales for months now, bringing in good money. Then some stranger shows up and buys one of the girls. Makes me curious. She's not a girl, she's a woman, and I paid fair." "Oh, I don't doubt it. But here's the thing, Hayes." Merrick stopped at the base of the porch, looking up at Caleb. "I do background on all my buyers, make sure they're not troublemakers. And when your name came up, I thought, now why would Caleb Hayes, who walked away from the war, who turned his back on duty, suddenly care about some no-name woman in a barn?" Caleb's jaw tightened. "What do you want, Merrick?" "I want her back." "No." Merrick sighed, like Caleb was being unreasonable. "See, you don't understand. That woman, Asta, I believe her. Name is she's got value, not just for work. She's got history, and history is useful." "What are you talking about?" "Her father owned land, prime land near the river. When he died, that land went unclaimed. I filed papers, made it legal, but if someone were to show up, say, a surviving heir, and contest my claim," Merrick spread his hands, "well, that'd be inconvenient." Caleb felt ice slide down his spine. "You knew who she was, you've known all along." "Of course I did. Why do you think I kept her alive? Could have killed her 10 years ago with the rest of her family, but I figured she might come in handy someday. And look at that, I was right." Merrick's eyes glittered. "So here's how this works. You hand her over, I take her back where she belongs, and you get to keep your little ranch here. Everyone wins." "Except her." "She's nobody, Hayes, just a loose end." Caleb took a step forward. "You killed her family for land. You've been selling people in barns like it's still 1860, and now you want me to hand her over so you can bury your crimes." "I want you to be smart." Merrick's voice hardened. "You already made one mistake during the war, going soft, getting yourself shot, running home. Don't make another one." Behind Caleb, the door creaked open. Asta stepped onto the porch, bare feet silent on the wood. She wore the same stained dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked at Merrick with eyes that held no fear, only hate. "Hello, Captain," she said softly. Merrick's expression shifted, just for a second, surprise flickering there. Then the cold smile returned. "Well now, didn't expect you to show your face." "Why not? You're here to take me anyway." "That's right, so why don't you save everyone the trouble and come on down?" Asta glanced at Caleb. Something passed between them, unspoken, fragile. Then she looked back at Merrick. "I'll toil for nothing," she said clearly. "I'll work your fields, scrub your floors, do whatever you want. Just don't take me back to that barn." Merrick laughed. "That's cute, but you don't get to negotiate." "Then you'll have to drag me." The two riders behind Merrick shifted in their saddles, hands tightening on their guns. Caleb moved in front of Asta, putting himself between her and the marshal. "She's not going anywhere." Merrick's smile vanished. "You're making a mistake, Hayes." "Probably, but it's mine to make." For a long moment, nobody moved. The wind kicked up dust, sent it swirling between them. Somewhere behind the barn, a cow lowed. Then Merrick raised his hand, and the two riders drew their pistols. "Last chance," Merrick said. Caleb's hand hovered near his gun. Behind him, Asta whispered, "Don't." But it was too late. The storm had already begun. So here's the question that changes everything. If you were Caleb, standing on that porch with a woman's life behind you and 3 guns in front of you, what would you do? Would you fight? Would you fold? Take a breath, think about that. Because sometimes the bravest thing a person can do isn't pulling a trigger, it's standing still. Caleb didn't draw his gun. Instead, he raised both hands, slow and deliberate. "All right," he said. "You win, Merrick." Asta gasped behind him. "What?" "Put your guns away," Caleb continued, voice steady. "I'll bring her down." Merrick studied him for a long moment, eyes narrow. Then he nodded, and the riders holstered their pistols. "Smart man," Merrick said. Caleb turned to Asta. Her face was pale, eyes wide with betrayal. "You're giving me to him," she whispered. "No," he leaned close, voice barely audible. "Trust me." She searched his face, looking for the lie, but whatever she saw there made her hesitate. He took her hand, gently, carefully, and led her down the porch steps. Merrick watched, smirking. "See," the marshal said, "that wasn't so hard." Caleb stopped 3 feet from Merrick, still holding Asta's hand. "Before you take her, I got something to show you." Merrick frowned. "What?" "Inside the house, papers, proof." "Proof of what?" "That she signed her land over to me, legal and binding, dated yesterday." Merrick's expression darkened. "You're lying." "Come see for yourself." The marshal hesitated, then gestured to his men. "Keep your guns on them. If they move, shoot." He followed Caleb up the porch and into the house. Asta came too, silent and watchful. Inside, Caleb walked to the table, picked up a folded piece of paper. He handed it to Merrick. The marshal unfolded it, scanned the words written there. His face went red. "This is a bill of sale for $80. It doesn't say anything about land." "No," Caleb agreed, "but it does say I bought her, which means legally anything she owned is now mine, including that land you want." Merrick crumpled the paper in his fist. "You think you're clever. I think you're a killer hiding behind a badge. And I think if you take her, I'll make sure every newspaper from here to Denver knows it." Merrick stepped closer, voice dropping to a snarl. "You don't have the guts. Try me." They stood there, inches apart, the air between them electric with violence. Then Asta spoke. "Burn it." Both men turned to look at her. "What?" Caleb said. She pointed at the crumpled paper in Merrick's hand. "The bill of sale, burn it, right now." "Asta." "If that paper exists, it means I'm property. It means someone can buy me, sell me, trade me. I won't live like that." Her voice was steady now, strong. "So burn it." Caleb stared at her. Then slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a match. He struck it against the stove, held the flame to the paper in Merrick's hand. The marshal jerked back, but it was too late. The paper caught, edges curling and blackening. Merrick dropped it onto the floor, where it burned to ash. "You're both insane," he hissed. "Maybe," Caleb said, "but now there's no proof she was ever sold, which means there's no proof I own her, which means she's free." Merrick's hand went to his gun. But before he could draw, hoofbeats sounded outside, lots of them. All 3 of them turned toward the door. Through the window, Caleb saw riders approaching, not Merrick's men, different ones. Old Tom Farley, who ran the feed store in town, Jacob Cross, the blacksmith, Sam Whitaker, the bartender, a dozen men, all of them local, all of them armed. Merrick's face went pale. "What is this?" "Community," Caleb said quietly. He walked to the door, opened it. The riders had spread out around the yard, surrounding Merrick's 2 men. Old Tom swung down from his horse, rifle cradled in his arms. "Heard there was trouble out here, Gid," Tom called, using Caleb's childhood nickname. "Figured you might need a hand." Caleb stepped onto the porch. "Appreciate it, Tom." Merrick appeared behind him, furious. "You can't do this. I'm a U.S. Marshal." "And we're citizens," Tom said mildly. "Got a right to defend our neighbors." "This isn't your business." "It is now," Tom looked past Merrick toward Asta. Miss, you all right? She nodded, not trusting her voice. Tom turned back to Merrick. Here's how this is gonna go, Marshall. You're gonna get on your horse and ride out, and you're not gonna come back, ever. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's ours to make. Merrick looked around, at the guns, at the faces, at the simple, stubborn refusal in their eyes. Then he spat into the dirt and stalked toward his horse. This isn't over, Hayes, he snarled. Yes, Caleb said, it is. Merrick and his men rode out, dust rising in their wake. The local men stayed until the riders were just specks on the horizon. Then Tom tipped his hat to Caleb. You need anything, you let us know. I will, thanks, Tom. The men rode off, leaving Caleb and Asta alone. She stood on the porch, staring at the ashes on the floor inside. You burned it, she said, the proof. You asked me to. But now you don't own the land, you don't own anything. Caleb looked at her. I never wanted to own you, Asta, I just wanted you to be free. She met his gaze, and for the first time since the barn, something in her face softened. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. What happens now? She asked. I don't know, he admitted, but we'll figure it out. She nodded slowly, then she turned and walked back into the house. Caleb stayed on the porch, watching the sun sink toward the mountains, and wondered if redemption was always this hard. Asta didn't leave. Caleb thought she might, thought she'd wake one morning and be gone, vanished like smoke. But she stayed, not because she had nowhere else to go, not because she owed him anything. She stayed because she chose to. The first week she barely spoke. She helped with chores, feeding chickens, mending fences, scrubbing pots, but she moved like a ghost, present but not really there. Caleb gave her space, let her work in silence, let her find her own rhythm. At night she slept in the back room with the door closed. He slept on the floor by the stove, wrapped in a blanket. The second week, she started asking questions. Why do you still have that photograph? She asked one evening, nodding toward the family portrait. Reminds me where I came from, Caleb said. Reminds me what I lost. Doesn't it hurt to look at it? Every day. She considered that. My family didn't leave anything behind. No pictures, no letters, just ashes. I'm sorry. I know. Another silence. Then, do you think they'd forgive me? Caleb looked at her. For what? For surviving, for not dying with them. Asta. I hid, she said, voice cracking. I heard them screaming and I hid. I could have fought, I could have. You would have died, Caleb's voice was firm. And then there'd be no one left to remember them, no one to say their names. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. Say them with me, Caleb said gently. She looked at him, confused. Their names, say them out loud. Asta's throat worked, then in. A whisper, James, my father, Mary, my mother, Samuel and Thomas, my brothers. James, Mary, Samuel and Thomas, Caleb repeated. They were here, they mattered. Asta closed her eyes and wept, deep, shaking sobs that seemed to tear her apart. Caleb didn't try to comfort her, just sat there, keeping watch, letting her grieve. When she finally stopped, her face was blotchy and red, but something had shifted. A weight lifted. Thank you, she whispered. You don't have to thank me. I do. The third week, she smiled for the first time. It happened while they were working on the fence line. Caleb had just hammered his thumb instead of the nail, cursed loud enough to startle the cattle. Asta had laughed, just a small sound, barely more than a breath, but it was real. He looked at her, stunned. She covered her mouth, embarrassed. Sorry. Don't be, he grinned, shaking his hand. That's the best sound I've heard in years. She ducked her head, but the smile stayed. By the fourth week, they'd fallen into a rhythm. She cooked breakfast while he tended the animals. They worked side by side during the day, fixing things, planting a small garden, repairing the barn roof. In the evenings, they sat on the porch and watched the sun set, talking about small things, the weather, the cattle, plans for winter. Never about the past, not yet. One night Asta asked, "What happened to your family? You never said." Caleb was quiet for a long time. Then, influenza, winter of 67, took my aunt first, then the kids, then her husband. I was away at the war. By the time I got home, they were already buried. I'm sorry. Me too. She reached over, slow and tentative, and took his hand. Her fingers were calloused now, strong from work. He squeezed gently. We are both ghosts, she said, haunting places that don't exist anymore. Maybe, Caleb said, or maybe we're just trying to build something new. She looked at him, grey eyes reflecting the firelight. You think that's possible? I do. She nodded, and they sat there together, hands clasped, watching the stars come out. A month after the standoff, a rider came to the ranch. Not Merrick, someone different, a young man in a dusty suit carrying a leather satchel. Mr. Hayes, he called from the yard. Caleb came out wary. Who's asking? Name's Albert Ross. I'm a clerk from the county land office. He pulled a document from his satchel. Got something here you need to see. Caleb took the paper, unfolded it. His eyes widened. What is it? Asta asked, coming to stand beside him. It's a land deed, Caleb said slowly. For your father's property, it says the claim filed by Thaddeus Merrick has been revoked. Investigation found evidence of fraud. Asta's breath caught. What? The clerk nodded. Marshal Merrick's been under investigation for months. Turns out he's been using his position to seize land illegally. The court ruled all his claims invalid. He looked at Asta, which means the land goes back to your family, to you, miss. Asta swayed. Caleb caught her arm, steadying her. It's yours, he said, all of it. She stared at the paper, then at Caleb, then back at the paper. I don't know what to do with land. Sell it, keep it, do whatever you want, it's yours. She was silent for a long moment, then she turned to Caleb. What if we worked it together? He blinked. What? Your ranch, my land, they're not far apart. We could combine them, build something bigger, something that lasts. She searched his face. Unless you don't want. I want, Caleb said quickly. I absolutely want. She smiled, full and genuine, the kind of smile that erased years of pain. The clerk cleared his throat. So, should I file the deed under your name, miss? File it under both our names, Asta said. Partners. Caleb's throat tightened. Partners, he echoed. 3 years later. The ranch had grown. They'd built a second barn, expanded the herd, planted fields of wheat and corn. The house had been rebuilt too, bigger now, with real windows and a stone fireplace. Asta stood in the yard, watching the sun rise over the mountains. She wore a simple dress, her hair braided down her back. Her hands were strong, scarred from work, but she smiled often now, laughed often. Behind her, the door opened. Caleb stepped out, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He handed her one. Morning, he said. Morning. They stood together, sipping coffee, watching lights spill across the valley. You ever think about that night? Asta asked. The barn. Sometimes. Me too, she turned to look at him. I used to think it was the worst night of my life, but now, I don't know, maybe it was the beginning of something. Maybe it was both, Caleb said. She nodded. Yeah, maybe. In the distance, cattle lowed. Birds sang in the cottonwood trees. The world turned, steady and sure. Asta reached for Caleb's hand, laced her fingers through his. Thank you, she said quietly, for seeing me. Thank why? Oh, Caleb replied, for staying. They stood like that as the sun climbed higher, 2 people who'd been broken and lost, now building something whole. The past still lingered, ghosts always did, but the future stretched out ahead of them, wide and open and full of possibility. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough.